And then you just
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Alyssa Korpinka, and I'm the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. Just to note that this event is being live streamed, so please be aware of the webcam to your right. I'd also like to take this moment to encourage you to silence your phones for the duration of the event. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Shifting Gears, Coast to Coast on the Trans Am Bike Race by Meaghan Marie Hackinen, published by New West Press. Thank you to Meaghan for being here tonight and to Sarah Robbins for joining us as host. Meaghan Marie Hackinen is a writer and cyclist from Vancouver, BC. Her two-wheeled adventures have taken her from Haida Gwaii to Mexico's high plateaus, across Canada and the United States, and most recently, from North Cape to Tarifa along some of Europe's highest paved roads. Meaghan is a Trans Am Bike Race, North Cape 4000, and Paris-Brest-Paris finisher, as well as the 2019 World 24-Hour Time Trial Champion and course record holder in the women's division. Her writing explores relationships, experiences on the road, and encounters with wild places. Her creative nonfiction, poetry, and prose can be found in literary journals and cycling magazines. She has an MFA in writing from the University of Saskatchewan and currently resides in Kelowna, BC. Sarah Robbins is a woman of legendary status in the Saskatchewan cycling. She began honing her skills racing sailboats with her father, John, in Ontario at age 10. Since then, Sarah has downhill ski raced and been crowned a triathlon, mountain biking, and bikepacking champion. In 2023, she won the BC Epic, a self-supported 1,000-kilometer backcountry mountain bike race. Sarah also has a PhD in veterinary medicine, which she mainly uses to keep her dogs healthy. She helps lead the Bike Doctor Pedal Wench Women's Cycling Club every summer and spends her weekends exploring gravel roads with her adventure partner and husband, Jeff. I will now turn things over to Meaghan. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you for joining me here today to celebrate my book launch. I'm so excited to be back in Saskatoon, where I have many years of wonderful memories, and I'm just enjoying the chance to reconnect with friends in both the writing and the cycling communities. I'd like to start out with a few thank yous because I'm super nervous and I don't want to forget anybody. So first, I'll share my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has believed in me and helped me on my way, or given me a granola bar when I was bonking on the side of the highway. You are too numerous to name, but know that you mean a lot to me. I'd like to thank New West Press, my publisher, for publishing not one, but two books about biking from me. They're pretty rad, so thank you for helping this become real. McNally Robinson Booksellers for hosting this incredible event and selling all sorts of great books, including mine, so thank you. I'd like to thank the BC Arts Council for providing me with an individual arts grant for creative writing so I could afford to live while I was unemployed and editing this book. The people who appear in this book, especially to Matthias, Rolf, Brian, Mitch, and Nuno, if you're tuning in on the live stream, your friendship and wisdom is really valued. I'd like to thank the Prairie Randonneers, who this book is dedicated to, for infusing me with their love of distance. There's a few of them here tonight, and they were part of my early ultra-distance cycling journey, and yeah, they will forever be a part of me. Finally, I'd like to thank the audience, both in person and virtual, for joining me in celebration. Let's give all these people, including yourselves, a round of applause before we start. So I completed the Trans Am bike race in the summer of 2017. Similar to my experience in South Away, cycling down the Pacific coast, this was a first for me. I was super green and I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that is the making of a good book, because there's a lot to talk about. An alternate title could have been Ultra Cycling, What Not to Do. Nevertheless, Shifting Gears is an insider look into the unregulated sport of self-supported bike pack racing, sharing my personal experience of camaraderie amongst competitors, digging deep to overcome tough challenges, and finding joy and beauty in the midst of challenging situations on a two-wheeled adventure that spans the continent. As mentioned, the Trans Am was my first and also my longest ultra to date, and I'll start by telling you a bit about the event by reading from the first chapter. I'm gonna get my water first.
Oh, there's water in there.
Race organizer Nathan Jones was clearly onto something when he devised the Trans Am bike race in 2014, setting riders out with a goal as simple as it was daunting. Get on your bicycle and ride across the country as fast as you possibly can. Hailed as America's premier self-supported road race, the Trans Am takes participants from Astoria, Oregon to Yorktown, Virginia, following the American Cycling Association's oldest bike route, the Trans-America Trail. Covering 4,264 miles, 10 states, several mountain ranges, from the Western Cascades to the Appalachians, on over 150,000 feet of vertical gain, it is, as Trans Am finisher and Inspired to Ride star Juliana Brewing succinctly put it, a race only for the crazies. Aside from I'm not nervous, okay. Aside from a modest entry fee and a GPS tracker, there are no prerequisites other than a willingness to venture into the unknown and an inclination towards boldness or stupidity. Unlike stage races like the Tour de France, the Trans Am operates as a continuous event. After rollout from Astoria, the clock doesn't stop ticking until you reach the Atlantic. No drafting, stages, or non-commercially available support are permitted. Media attention is minimal, and the only prize up for grabs is bragging rights. Unless you're lucky enough to have friends or family fly out, no one will even be there to hand you a beer when you cross the finish line at Yorktown Monument, Virginia. The Trans Am is not for everyone, but to those craving an experience outside the norm, the race harbors an allure, a mystique, the promise of something so epic it resonates more as aspiration than description. The opportunity to venture into the beating heartland of America and discover what you are really made of. Mere mention of the Trans Am has become a siren's call, ensnaring the mind of the intrepid, adventure-seeking cyclist. You can probably guess, dear audience, that I was one of those starry-eyed cyclists. And I'll read a couple of short excerpts to give you a feel for it. So this is right at the beginning. The 2017 edition of the Trans Am bike race rolled out just after dawn in Astoria, Oregon. No banners, no signs, just a legion of day-glow, lycra-clad cyclists in the parking lot of the Harborfront Maritime Museum, listening to race organizer Nathan Jones bellow final reminders from a bullhorn against the backdrop of a massive bronze propeller blade. This is a bike ride, all right. It's a race, but really nobody cares, he said, pausing as nervous laughter leapfrogged through the crowd. Nobody cares. Your family barely understands what you're doing. Your friends have no idea. And the people you don't know, they're going to think you are idiots. And you kind of are idiots. Nathan continued, but I found myself distracted, head weary from fitful night before the big day sleep, scanning the crowd for the reassurance of familiar faces and sizing myself up against the competition. Based on previous race results, only 50% of us were likely to finish. Eric, who had accompanied me from our host's apartment, had wound up on the opposite side of the propeller blade, sharing a lap with a couple of guys I didn't know. Closer, I caught the eye of Portland bike courier DBR. With a brisk nod, he rolled by to wish me luck. Remember, rubber side down, he said. Then, as an afterthought, do you think that's the best place for your spot? I had attached my spot tracker, an orange and black GPS tracking device the size of a coaster and the thickness of a paperback, under my seat post. I'd struggled to find a fitting location for it among frame bags and aero bars, having only picked up the device during the pre-race meeting at the night before. You might not get reception with it pointed at your butt, he helpfully pointed out. I stood back to examine my bike, racing the frame with both hands. Maybe I could strap it to the handlebars, I said. Be quick, he said, wheeling towards another face in the crowd. Just then, Thomas Camaro, the Trans Am's oldest finisher to date, marched by with a bottle of champagne, a tower of plastic cups protruding from his jacket pocket. Hold my bike, I pleaded. He agreed, tucking the bottle precariously under an arm as he reached for my bicycle, Epona. I felt lightheaded, only 5 minutes now. My trembling fingers struggled to pinch the zipper of the top tube bag where I'd stored my Swiss Army knife. Stupid nerves. I popped open the blade and nicked my thumb, attempting to cut the zip ties attaching my spot to my seat post. Here, said Thomas, seeing the smidge of blood, my electric anxiety. We traded places. He took the knife from my hand, passing the champagne off to a nearby rider. As Thomas sliced my spot free, I instinctively stuck my thumb in my mouth and I sucked hard, the taste of metal. A few seconds later, he had secured the device to my handlebars with another set of zip ties I directed him pull from my larger frame bag. Thanks, I said, grateful but blushing embarrassment for failing to complete even this small task alone. I didn't need anyone to remind me that once we rolled out, I'd be solely responsible for taking care of my own problems. This was DIY racing, low budget, no support. You figure it out or you go home. Thomas grinned, retrieving the champagne and ceremoniously tipping an inch of bubbly into a plastic cup for me. The fizz sloshed in the cup between my jittery palms like the tumultuous Columbia River. Other racers clinked rims in delight. I wondered how I even got there, struck yet again, for the umpteenth time in the past week, by the incalculable magnitude of this challenge I had so cavalierly signed up for. Suddenly, we were counting down to the grand depart. I slugged back the champagne, crushed the plastic cup into a jersey pocket. A cheer erupted, bystanders snapped photos. We were off, jostling shoulders in our high-vis vests, like a school of yellow snapper fleeing Astoria's misty shores. So I ride my bike and I ride it some more and I sleep in some ditches and eat some donuts from the gas station and eat and sleep and ride. And this next section takes place once I get to Idaho and I'm cycling with a fellow I met named Matthias from Germany. I spent a whole day riding with him and didn't learn his name. And I had to embarrassingly find out in a text message from my mom at the end of the day. So I think that speaks a bit to the special weirdness of friendships made in these kind of difficult, different circumstances where you can really get the feeling of knowing someone well, but you don't have a clue what their name is. From Grangeville, we traced the Clearwater River toward Lolo Pass. Already, I'd grown to like Matthias. He was forthright and confident, with razor-sharp tan lines and a quiet determination. Besides, his company served as a much-appreciated distraction from the caustic thoughts running rampant in my mind. At first, we pedaled in the relaxed hues of morning, enjoying partial shade and a cool breeze lifting from the white water. We rolled by a riverside lodge with an adjoining cafe, opting to continue without stopping since our water bottles remained full from our recent resupply. Not long after, a road sign warned of a winding highway for the next 99 miles. A kettlebell dropped in my stomach. 99 miles, I said. This is the race's longest ascent, Matthias responded matter-of-factly. We'll climb gradually until Lolo Pass on the Idaho-Montana border. The numbers turned over in my head again. How had I not known this? There's a store or at least a restaurant at Lolo Lodge, he added, seeing my concern, near the summit. It might be closed by the time we get there. I stared hard at the pavement just ahead of my front bike tire, mentally calculating if the contents of my pockets held sufficient caloric value to see me through the following 99 miles until Lolo. By midday, temperatures were sweltering. When we weren't wiping away sweat, Matthias and I chatted alongside each other, falling into single file when a vehicle approached. Then traffic picked up, forcing us to abandon any semblance of conversation. I glanced at my odometer, the numbers hardly moving in the burgeoning heat. By noon, I felt disoriented, the scenery unchanging, river to your right, forest to your left, mile after blazing mile. You would expect someone familiar with riding in the prairies to be accustomed to repetition, but it got to me. A mad boredom creeping in. I wondered if we were in Oregon, Montana, or Idaho. The grade remained imperceptible, though I sensed my speed lagging, the tedium wearing me down. Sharp pains splintered in my temples, its cause tricky to pinpoint. Dehydration or frustration. Perhaps the frightful suspicion we might actually be stuck in time. Matthias and I continued to squeegee sweat from our brows. The scenery hadn't changed for hours when we pulled onto a gravel patch and abandoned our bicycles to scramble down a rock screed toward the Clearwater River. Empty water bottles in hand, we were seeking relief from the stifling heat and endless trees barring us in on the road to Lolo. We peeled off our socks and shoes, left sweat-soaked jerseys on a boulder to dry, and wiggled toes the pale, sickly color of deep-sea worms as we tiptoed into water with legs uncertain, reluctant to commit to movement off the bike. The kinetic energy of surging whitewater washed away those cloying road odors of car exhaust and tar snakes. I knelt into the torrent and gripped my teeth, embracing the stabbing cold and hard rock against my shins. A few feet away, Matthias lowered himself as well, his face contorting, eyes alternately creased shut and blinking wide from the shock. Dare you to put your head under, I said. He flashed an expression of horror and then dunked, came up screaming. Now you, he said. I breathed in, imagining a much younger self, a girl fearlessly diving into kelp bed to swim down to listen for mermaids singing from depths beneath. I sealed my lips and thrust my face under, the coursing current drowning out my own hammering heart. 1, 2 seconds, bolts of light, stars exploding in the back of my retinas, the intertwining of pain and joy. Water crashed overhead as I held my breath in a dare from a shivering, lycra-clad German. Thanks. And I'll invite Sarah to come up and join me. And we're going to talk about self-supported racing, long-distance cycling, and all those kind of fun things. So yeah, you're in for a treat.
We'll just grab this bit for you. Sure.
I'm getting older.
Don't listen to her. Wise.
You get faster when you get older and ultrasound. So. Hey, hey. This.
You have a mic.
Would you like to start or shall I?
Oh, I can start since I've been talking. So.
Okay.
When did you get into long distance cycling?
Well, I've been riding, probably been cycling probably for 10 or 15 years, but mostly shorter stuff. And it seems to be the older I'm getting, the longer races are getting, the longer the events are getting. And so you started with like sprint triathlons, which are swim, bike, run, and then got into Olympic triathlons, and then maybe did a couple of halves, and then got into bike racing, mountain bike racing, but they were always like an hour and a half, or cyclocross racing, which is an hour. And then somehow, and I think it was my partner, Jeff, that kind of got bit by the cycling bug, the endurance cycling bug. And he's like, we should do the AR 700. So I think that was our first kind of goal or venture into bike pack racing or endurance racing. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, when we did the first time we did the AR. So we've done a bit of prep leading up to that.
What's the AR for people who don't know?
So that's the Alberta Rockies 700. So it's a bike packing race that basically starts in Canmore, goes down through Sparwood, Fernie, over Middle Pask, and then back up again. Mainly single track, some gravel. Quite an adventuresome race, and that was a very adventuresome race. That was when, I think, that was our first venture into bike packing. Okay, how about you?
I got into long distance cycling as a touring cyclist, just as a means to get from A to B and see everything in between, and do it cheaply and in an environmentally kind of sensitive way, and just to be on the road and live on the road. I got into kind of competitive cycling. I was bitten by that bug when I was living in Saskatoon and riding with the Prairie Rountaineers, and Lael Wilcox won the Trans Am bike race. And Lael won the 2016 edition, and seeing a woman win like a big event just forced me to reconsider how I thought about my own limitations and kind of, want to throw my hat in the ring as well. So.
Well,
Are you a competitive person, Sarah? Would people describe you as such? Passing the mic to Jeff.
Well, I think I would describe myself as being less competitive than I was when I was younger, but I think most people would describe me as being competitive. Certainly when I was younger, like I started with kind of odd sports. Like I started when in the summer I'd be sailing with my dad built sailboats. So we did sailboat racing from 14-foot dinghies to 25-foot sailboats. So we'd race them in the summer, horse riding in the summer, and in the winter would be downhill ski racing. That lasted till about university. And then in university is when I kind of got bitten by more of the endurance bug, and then started racing triathlon, mountain bike, road. But I'm not a great racer because I don't like the lead up to racing. I don't like starts. Lots of these bikepacking races or endurance races, they have what they call a grand depart. So everybody gets together and they start, and I hate grand departs. Like I would just rather like, okay, I'll see you guys. I'll start next day, or we'll start, we'll do it. You can also do what they call individual time trial. So you do the same course, but you're not doing the grand depart. So I am competitive as soon as I start, but the whole lead up to getting there, I'm not very good at that, and I don't want that. But once I get started, yeah. And then Jeff and I have been very like riding together has been very good for, it's super fun, and we both encourage each other, but we're also very competitive between each other. Like I remember just a number of years ago, we did a cyclocross race and it was snowy and gross. And I think we were racing together, and we killed each other trying to beat each other, and like would fall down, and the next person would go by the next person, and they'd fall down and stuff. So yeah, I think I like the competitive.
I've had similar experiences with my partner James, where we're kind of like, we're just riding, and then you're pushing it a little more, and then the other person's pushing it a bit more, and the next thing you know, you're on the rail trail, like sprinting on like a bikepacking tour that's supposedly relaxed, and you're like, why are we doing this? And then you kind of look for an excuse, right? Like, well, we gotta go stop and go swimming there, and that's like the finish line. I could also relate to what you were saying about being like nervous about kind of the grand depart and the lead up, and like there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people to see. There's a lot of like intensity, and just it's kind of not I want to say it's like a high emotion time, like for me. So it's hard to reel that in sometimes.
Yeah, but then as soon as it starts, and you probably have the same sense, as soon as it starts, it's just like everything relaxes, and you can, then you kind of get down to business, or it just all of a sudden it just goes away, and then you settle in.
Totally agree. Yeah, it's like a switch. Like I'm on, and this is just what I'm doing now, and this is what I've been training for. And then once that switch hits, I'm totally good to go. Yeah.
Okay, so self-supported racing. What does that mean, and how is it different from other kinds of races?
So self-supported racing means that you have to be self-sufficient. You pack your own gear, so that includes like a sleep structure, the food you need between resupplies. Sometimes those can be quite far away. Your own, stuff to take care of your bike, your mechanical kit, any first aid stuff you're going to need. You bring a GPS tracker so that people know where you are, and so that you can call for help if you fall off a cliff or something. I did one supported race this year, the Silver State 508 across Nevada, and that one had a follow vehicle, and it was so different having this crew and a follow vehicle to take care of my every beck and call. But I think self-supported is a little more unregulated, and a lot of the events, you just sign up for a GPS tracking, you just pay your GPS tracking fee, and it goes online, and people will show up at the start line, and everyone's out there to have a good race. Yeah. Did I miss anything about self-supported? It's pretty challenging. You really have to rely on yourself, which is both a challenging and a beautiful thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because if you go out for the weekend, versus a whole week, you pretty much load your bike the same. So, in some ways it's a little bit easier because you can just pack, you just know this is what I'm taking for the day or for 2 days. It's the same with basically what you take for a week, which is the same what you take for 3 weeks, maybe 1 or 2 more underwear, but generally mostly everything is the same. So then you just get in the habit of this is what I need and you got to take this and then but it's also a growth thing too, because the first couple of times you go out, you've forgotten something and you're like, oh, I forgot matches or I forgot I forgot my thermarest. And then, but then as you get into it and you get more and more intuitive what you actually need.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was way easier packing this summer because I did kind of shorter weekend races and I had it all down. Yeah, you can make those decisions and if you don't have it, you don't have it. You're not going to kick yourself in the butt for it. You just don't have it. You have to deal with it.
Yeah, you just kind of have to make do, eh?
Yeah. So what do you enjoy about bikepacking?
Part of it is I've always liked camping, and this is kind of like camping and hiking, but you get to go farther. So you get to get more remote, or you get farther between stops, and so you get to see more of the country. And so instead of hiking 10K, you can bike pack 40K, or you can bike pack 100K, or wherever you're going. So you can get farther in. It's carrying all your stuff is super neat. Like you're like a little snail with your house. You're going faster than the snail, but you're like a little snail. You got all your stuff and all your gear, and you are self-reliant to the main. Obviously you're stopping for refueling, but you are self-reliant. It's pretty empowering just to get out in the backcountry and have all your stuff and ride. And then Jeff and I have been exploring a lot of Saskatchewan, kind of like Lynn and Merlin has been exploring a lot of Saskatchewan, and it gets you into some of the most amazing places. And people don't see that when they're driving or even riding on the highway. You don't see it as much, but when you're gravel riding and you get into the these hills that you have never seen before, you get these really neat churches. Like Jeff's always stopping at churches. You see all these really great things. It's pretty cool. I really like it.
Yeah, I think that resonates with me. And biking in the Okanagan backcountry, it's the same. It's this process of discovery. There's a lot out there. There's a ton of Forest Service roads that are used by recreationalists, people on quads or hunters, or trying to get out for a weekend away from the busy resort areas. But you can link up some really cool stuff on a bike, from quad trail to like hiking trail to these Forest Service roads, and drop down and do some pavement. So it's really, I feel like I'm a big kid again. You can be really adventurous, and you can eat candy for breakfast if you want.
Yeah. Okay. What do you find challenging about bikepacking?
Sometimes it's hard to be alone if you're alone, and sometimes it's hard to be with other people if you're with other people. So I think the relationship with yourself is both, you learn to rely on yourself, but sometimes it can be hard to be on your own. And the same thing with other people. We rely on them, but sometimes that can be difficult to manage. The challenging things are the things that I probably my fears and things I worry about, getting a mechanical I can't deal with, or running into a bear on some single track, or being woken up in the middle of the night by a moose. And these are my fears, but they don't necessarily happen. So those are some of the challenges. The terrain can be a big challenge too, especially for me. I'm coming from like a road cycling background, so I don't really know how to mountain bike, and I'm pretty clumsy. And when I encounter terrain that I don't know what to do with, I often just end up walking. And then afterwards, I'm like, Meaghan, you got to try riding it, or you're never going to get better. So the challenges of the terrain. And often you're riding on these roads that have been maybe decommissioned, or the bridge is washed out, and you just have to like wade through it. So it's very different than road cycling.
I find for me, sometimes the challenge is in my head. I have a distance that I want to go. Like today, if we have a route and we want to go 180K to the end of the route, and then all of a sudden you're on a super sketchy road, or difficult, or you're having to hike a bike, or it's just hard work, and in my mind, I'm always thinking, I'm not going to get that 180K. I'm not going to get to that 180K. And then, so that's a challenge for me, I find, is just to take all, unless you're racing, I guess, but just regular bike packing, just take those expectations away and say, okay, this is what I'm in doing this at this moment, and enjoy what I'm doing at the moment, rather than just kind of like race to the end so we can get to beers or whatever the, whatever the plan is to get there is, and try and be in the moment a bit more. I think that's my challenge a bit with bike packing, is I'm a get the job done kind of person. So my ride is at the end of the day, that's when it's done.
So you're not like a stop for ice cream. You're like you get to the finish and have a burger and a beer.
I am definitely not a stop for ice cream. Yeah, we've had numerous discussions while riding about stopping. Yeah, I would way rather stop at the end and have a beer and a burger.
What's it like to ride at night? Is it scary?
I haven't done a lot of night riding. Generally the way I race, or we race, is that we race hard, like we race fast and hard. So our average speeds are high, so our mileage is high, but usually we like to have 6 to 8 hours of rest each night. So we might ride till 10 to 12, and then just call it quits and then get up early, get up at 4 or 5. I have done on the BC Epic last year. That was my first overnighter solo. I mean, I have done solo rides in Saskatchewan, but that was my first kind of race solo overnighting, and I had to overnight over Great Pass. And it was great. I loved it. It was just piled in the ditch. So didn't even put up a tent, didn't put up, just piled in my tarp and my quilt and didn't worry about anything. So I think I'm actually, and so for bike packing too, most of your riding's done either like 4 service roads or double track, single track, not a lot of pavement. So I don't never worry about cars. And I think for the, racing across America or Trans Am, I think that's so much difference because you're on the highway so much more. And I think just that would worry me more about bears or anything like that. So I think that's what I would worry about, but I never worry about that when we're riding at nights.
Yeah, I think it's very different on the highways. There's less traffic at night, but the traffic you do encounter, there's more drunk drivers. There's more yahoos out. I don't know what a better word is than that. In my book, I read about this time where I'm riding with fellow engineers Bob and Marge, and some cars kind of gives us a hard time for being out there for no other reason than being on a road at night. And we're all on the shoulder, and they're just telling us that we shouldn't be there. And we're kind of saying, well, we're wearing reflective vests, we're on the shoulder, what are we doing wrong? And they're telling us to be more careful and being kind of aggressive, and then they drove off. But yeah, situations like that kind of scare me a bit, and that hasn't happened a lot. And I think that's less likely to happen on a Forest Service road where you're probably not going to run into anyone. I did a lot of night riding this year because I did events between 380 and 830 kilometers, and I tried not to sleep. So I was kind of just riding through the day and night and day again. And it's challenging. I think sleep deprivation is it's not easy, and so I'm trying to ride safely but also pushing my limit. In a hot day like the year that I did the BC Epic, it was really hot. It's like a relief to start riding into the night. You're kind of looking forward to it, and that transition to sunset, so beautiful. And then you get kind of into the thick of it, and by 1 or 2 a.m. you're kind of like, yeah, this is getting old. I could use a sunrise pretty soon. I spend a lot of time calling the Hey Bear song, whether there's bears or not. There could be raccoons, and you just yell, Hey Bear, and hopefully any bears run away and not chew you. But I think it used to be scarier for me, and I've kind of, just found some more comfort in it.
How about, can you share a highlight from one of your events?
Yeah, one of my favorite events this summer was called the Dark Divide. What a great name that is. And it's called the Dark Divide because it goes through Washington's Dark Divide motorless area. And so it's an area where you don't really have motor vehicles, and it's kind of in the mountains. So it's quite rugged and challenging. It's in the Cascade Range. I was racing all day. There's two people ahead of me, a woman named Becca Books and a guy named Andy Lovato, both really strong racers. And there's this like 15-kilometer kind of single track ridge trail. It's not single track, it's a trail. It's not meant really for bikes. And so there's a lot of hike a bike on this trail. And I got to it at sunset, a beautiful time. You know, it's going to get dark. It's getting more challenging as it's getting darker to negotiate this trail. And then I see this little light in the distance, and it was Becca Book in front of me, pushing her bike up a hill. And so I raced hard to catch up to her, and we just chatted for like an hour or two in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, alternatingly like pushing our bikes and kind of riding them like tripod style with one foot clipped in and one foot out so that we could like maneuver better and more safely. We're both covered in dust from bailing, and we had a really nice little ride together. And then I ditched her and raced to the finish. I'm gonna jump to a different question. What's your let's talk about the epic. Tell us what it was like to win the BC Epic.
Well, it was pretty neat. It was, so the BC Epic was the race, and Meaghan's done it and has also won it as well. So you've done it twice now, haven't you?
I've only done it once.
Oh, just once. Yeah. That was the year, actually, Jeff and I were going to do it that year. We tried to do it twice. And 1 year was COVID, and then the next year was the year that Meaghan did it and won it. And it was like, that was the year that they had that crazy heat dome and forest fires, and we chickened out, and Meaghan did not chicken out and did amazing and won it that year. So luckily she wasn't there this year, which is why I was able to win it. But it was great, actually. So we started, goes from Merritt to Fernie, and it's the first section of it's primarily on the KVR, Kettle Valley Railway, which is the Railster Trail, all the way through, kind of down through Princeton, across through Summerland to Penticton, up to Kelowna, well, not quite to Kelowna, Shoot Lake, and then it hits some other stuff, a kind of combination of a lot of different surfaces. So we started, Jeff took a wrong turn. We weren't going to race together. We were totally separate, had all our separate gear. So this is going to be an experiment, to see if we can actually race separately. I didn't think I wasn't worried about it, but Jeff was a bit worried about how he would deal with not racing with me. So luckily he did a wrong turn within about 10K of the course. And so he went off, and I got ahead of him, and was ahead of him for most of the second day. And then the next day we're kind of back and forth a little bit, because he's a stronger rider than I am, but I'm a bit more efficient. So when we'd stop in at like food stops and stuff, he would be like poking around, and I would get my stuff and I'd zip out, and then he'd catch up. And then so then that night we were together, and then the next day we got separated again. And this is the funniest part, and I think the race, and everybody says this is about a defining part of our relationship, is so I was just probably about 15 minutes behind him coming through into there's a ferry that goes across Kootenay Lake, and it goes probably every hour till around 7, and then the next ferry is not till 9, and then that's the last ferry of the night. So anyways, I was a little bit behind Jeff, come bombing down, and I just come down onto the quay, right onto the ramp out to the ferry, get to the end of it, and I'm like, oh, the ferry's gone. And I was like, oh, I missed the ferry. And I looked at it, and sure enough, I missed the ferry by 5 minutes. And I thought, oh, no problem. The next ferry is going to be in another hour. I won't have lost that much time. And turns out the next ferry wasn't for another 2 hours. So I got stuck behind. And then, friends of ours were watching, were dot watching. So they're watching our tracker, and they could see this Jeff's dot on the ferry about 5 minutes out, and my dot on the quay on the terminal part. And they took a screenshot of it and sent it and said, "Dirty move." And like, he didn't wait for you? And I'm like, of course he didn't wait for me. And then the rest of the race was just kind of surviving and getting through it. And I ran out of light with like 15K to go, with just this tiny little, like, I'd turn my light down and down and down, and we're through. This is now real bear country, because we're kind of between Elko and Fernie.
It's a gnarly section, and it's just like a bunch of like quad tracks going this way and that with rocks, and there's a bunch of hike a bike, and it's
Yeah.
really disorienting.
And this was like 1 a.m, and I was just like, if I lose my light, I'm gonna have to camp out here. I'm gonna have to wild camp because I can't. It's pitch like I tried turning my light off to see what would happen, and of course it's pitch black. So I'm like, I cannot sleep out. I mean, I can't keep going if I lose my light. And then I got so I got through the super gnarly section, and I think I had about 10K to go, and now the light's getting and so now it's like 2 a.m, and I finally hit the edge of Fernie. You could see the lights, and I'm like, oh my god, I made it. And then my light died going from the finish to the campground. So I was like super lucky to get through that. But yeah, I was getting a bit stressed because I thought I'd have to sleep. And I wasn't worried about sleeping out. And I was probably more worried that Jeff was gonna be worried that I had to sleep out.
Aw.
But it was pretty fun. And yeah, it kind of makes me think about being able to, or doing more more spectac races.
More like solo or more races?
A little bit of both. Like
Yeah.
solo's fun, but together's fun too. We've got a pretty good system now, and I think we're better at like, let's race separately during the day and end up where we end up. And I think that would probably be the nice way to do it, because it's nice to do it with people. Like solo racing's fun, but it's also like just be able to share that with people is kind of fun. Have you and James ever done a race together?
No, we haven't. We've gone to the Starline together of a few events. The AR 700 we started together, and the Dark Divide we started together. But the Dark Divide, we both wanted to race it. So we took like 5 days and toured the route. It's about 530 kilometers. It's pretty challenging terrain. Like I said, 15 kilometers of like half biking, half walking. But we toured it together. I had a really nice time, and then took a week off, got our bikes tuned up and ready, and then raced it separately. That one actually finished in Portland, where he lives. So it was so nice just to go and like sleep in his bed after, as I waited for him, because I'm a little faster.
Okay, what's your favorite trail snack?
Snickers.
Snickers.
Oh, I love Snickers. Yeah. Marge was saying, Marge likes Mars, I think, because they don't have the crunchy bits, but I kind of like those crunchy bites, the nuts.
When I first met you, well, not first met you, but when I met you again at the AR 700, a few years ago, that was back in 2021, I think you were racing that one.
Yeah.
And your superpower, and that your superpower still is the ability to go and go and go and stop for like zero times. Like when you did the Silver Star 500,
Silver State 508.
Silver State's 508, 30 minutes was your stop time. Could you imagine?
That's only because I
508 miles, stopping for 30 minutes. Like, it's just unbelievable. So like you have this superpower, as well as being like incredibly strong rider. You're an incredibly strong rider that never stops. And how does that work?
Well, in Shifting Gears, there's a lot of references to Schwarzenegger. So sometimes I envision myself as a Terminator, and I'm like just like on this mission to hunt down my opponents ahead of me. But it's also kind of like a Terminator Shark cross. So I don't know what that looks like. Somebody please draw it for me. We should probably wrap up here so we can do some book signings, but I'll ask you one question before we go. This is hard for the last question. Do you have any future goals for the sport?
Yeah, next summer I think we'd like to do is called the Triple Crown. So it's out east. There's 3 races. There's the Log Drivers Waltz, which is you've done before and you won it.
I have the course
you have the course record. Yeah, because you did that as ITT. Yeah, so I don't think I'll be working on that, but I would like to do it. So there's that one, and then there's one called the Butter Tart round, which is kind of more on the escarpment of Ontario, and then the third race of that is in the upstate New York. So there's 3 races I think we're going to do next summer, and then my final goal, which I don't think Jeff is quite on board yet, is the Silk Road race. I really want to do that.
You did not hear that here.
Live streamed on YouTube. You can't take it back.
And quickly, you?
I don't have any plans yet for next year. I'm, buckling down into my training and I'm really excited to continue racing. And I'm gonna make a stronger effort to write about my experience because seeing this book published and come to fruition brings me a lot of joy. And I've had a lot of experiences on the bike that are just kicking around in my head, and I better write them down before I lose them to my memory vault. Thank you so much for joining me, Sarah. Let's have a round of applause.
We'll just say a quick word before I let you go. I'd like to thank Megan and Sarah again for being with us tonight. We have copies of Shifting Gears on the desk to your right there. And if you'd like your copy signed or if you'd like to say hello, Megan will be happy to meet you at the signing table right there. Thank you all for coming out tonight and enjoy the rest of your evening.